So, the translations are out for My Hero Academia Manga Chapter 421, and there's some things that we really need to talk about in this chapter. We need to talk about whether or not Deku still has one for all. We need to talk about the philosophy of a very unexpected character, as well as we need to talk about the moment that we've all been waiting for, where all of the heroes come to fight off All for One, all together. And we have more to talk about, but before we get into that, first, we have to get into the actual review. Hey guys, how's it going? It is your boy, Manga Andrew, and I'm here to do my manga review for My Hero Academia Manga Chapter 421. And just to start off, we do have the title for this chapter being We Are Here in all caps and in English, which is something that I do not think that Horikoshi has done frequently. If not, this is the first time he has done it. And this is going to be a very monumental moment, especially what's going on in this chapter, for the reasoning why the title is as it is. But overall, I will say that what we will be talking about in this review is going to be going over whether or not Deku still has one for all, and just talking a little bit more about the philosophy of the characters in this chapter, one of them being All for One, but then another one being an unexpected character. So let's just dive right into the chapter and really talk about what's going on. And let's just say that the start of the chapter is something that really got me a little bit emotional with what the context of these scenes are. Because you need to remember, My Hero Academia is very much influenced by Horikoshi's interest in American superheroes. And just to get the bandage off, this chapter has a canonical and more very much representation of the Avengers Assemble moment from Endgame in this chapter. We've been talking about the fact that Horikoshi is making references to Endgame, but we finally get the objective reference in this chapter with a double page spread where we get the title of the chapter, We Are Here, as well as My Hero Academia in English text. And what I will say is that what I like about this Avengers Assemble like moment in My Hero Academia is that there's a little bit of build up to it, not just over the past few chapters, but even in this chapter itself, where we have all of the individuals that we saw from last chapter, as well as other individuals, all composing of members of Class 1A, giving their reasonings for why they're here, and that even though they are heavily injured, that they just can't sit back and let Deku just handle fight against All for One, because it goes against what they're trying to do and trying to be, which are heroes. So having most of these characters just give an idea for the reasoning why they are here very much built up to the We Are Here moment, because they are finally here. All of the heroes, not just from Class 1A, but even some of the more sideline pro heroes. And if you just look at the double page spread, you'll be able to pinpoint heroes that we haven't seen in a while, but have had, if not big roles within the story, have always been there and has always played some part. So this is a moment that I really enjoyed, because it really is the accumulation of the themes of heroes needing to work together to finish and solve a common goal. And that you can't just rely on a single individual to save the day. All of the heroes, all of Hero Society must come together to, in a way, save the day. So this is kind of the reason why I like this moment, because it just heavily ties into the themes of My Hero Academia. But even with that being something that is very interesting, another interesting aspect is really what All for One kind of says in this moment when he is just talking about all of these heroes in front of him. And how he gives an explanation for why he's still alive, and how both Shigaraki and All for One were tied together, and that when Tomoe Shigaraki disappeared, All for One should have also disappeared, but that when he heard that his brother shattered to pieces and that he no longer had the will to live, he was able to, in a way, break away from Tomoe Shigaraki and survive. And how this experience made him realize that he has become stronger, and that literally nothing that Deku can do, either physical or mental damage, can actually hurt him. And that's because of the struggles that he has gone through that had made him stronger. And how as he's talking to Deku, he's trying to understand, oh, I finally get it. The reasoning why you are strong, even without a quirk, is because you went through struggle. And that's why I am currently strong as well. Don't you agree? As we see that he's turning into just this amorphous blob of just multiple spikes and stabbing weapons, and just, it looks very terrifying. And when it comes to this idea that All for One has, he kind of has a point, But what is interesting is Zero bringing up a sort of counter to it, where he brings up the idea that he doesn't think that that's how it should be. How the world shouldn't be making you stronger by going through these harsh trials and tribulations. And that he brings up his own example, which is that he's just a normal guy that just got stronger over time because he kept training and honing his skills. And he also brings up the point that while yes, trauma can make people stronger, it can be just as, if not more, detrimental, as we see that out of the portals next to All For One, both Endeavor and Shoto both use a flash fire fist to attack All For One, as Zero uses his tape to get them out of the way. And how Zero believes that even though tragedy can make you stronger, in the case of maybe potentially hinting at quirk awakenings, he also just brings up the idea that that is just not something that we should strive for. We shouldn't strive to be stronger by using just tragedies altogether, and that the fact that there are other ways for you to get stronger means that you don't need to have like a harsh backstory or like a horrible life to build yourself up. And I kind of like the idea where Horikoshi or Zero is going with this, is that it's sort of like the ends don't justify the means, where the end goal of being stronger shouldn't be justified by you going through a whole bunch of trauma. And that if there is an opportunity to become stronger and not have to go through tragedies, that's just how the world should work. And I like the fact that it's coming from Zero and bringing in Endeavor and Shoto into it, because you may not think that Zero has a connection with this idea, but we also need to fall back and realize that we don't know a whole bunch about Zero, and that's mainly because the idea is that he's just a normal guy, and that he got into the hero course based off his own skill and talent and his quirk. And that while he didn't go through any of these trials and tribulations, we also need to remember that he was one of the very few characters in the actual sports festival arc that actually made it into the finals in the tournament fighting fashion. And while yes, he had to be pit up against Shoto, which is why he has a connection to Shoto in this moment when it comes to this philosophy and this ideals, and he actually got the jump on Shoto during the sports festival, but still lost because Shoto just went all out because he was not in the right mental state. So it shows that there is a connection for why Zero is the mouthpiece for this ideal, and it's established from previous interactions and knowledge that he gained from Shoto. And just to put a stopgap in this before I go on to something else, is that we also sort of get a flashback for how Endeavor and Shoto were able to make it to the battle at this moment. That luckily enough, the robots were able to give them as well as Rei some immediate medical attention, but that due to Rei just overworking herself in this moment, you have Natsu who believe that Endeavor should go somewhere else to fight as to not put any more damage and strain on Rei, his mother. And as we transition from here over, we are going to be getting a lot of just cool action sequences as we have Present Mike leading the charge, saying that this is going to be our final mission, as we have All For One preparing an attack, but then we get to see some well-known quirks and characters coming in to try and stop him, with 13 riding on the Dog Man using their black hole. As we have Gang Orca, as well as the individual who's able to produce like their fingers to mold others, going in on an attack on All For One in this moment. And this is something very interesting because this is not something that you typically see in shonen a lot, where you have a whole bunch of characters ganging up on one to try and defeat them. And that the only time we've really seen this in My Hero Academia is actually during this final war. But it's really just showing how the heroes themselves are trying their best to work together as one unit to try and defeat All For One. Now, unfortunately, All For One is extremely powerful and basically blows them all away with a single attack, but that is not going to stop them. And this is where we get into the more Deku portion of the chapter, where we have Kendo leading a charge as well, as Deku wants to go in and fight, but he comes to a realization that he is still heavily injured from all the battle damage that he had in the previous iterations of this fight, as well as the confirmation that as far as he's aware of, he no longer has One For All or the other quirks attached to One For All. And that he tells Aizawa this, who is most likely, when he learns this, does not want Deku to participate in this fight. But then Deku realizes that he is still very much a hero, and that he still wants to fight against All For One and stop him. And how even though he no longer has One for All, very much like All Might in his final battles, he still has the embers of One for All inside of him, which means that he can still fight against the other villain of All for One and fight alongside the other heroes. And this is something that I really want to talk about, because many people are going to be sad or hate the idea that Deku is going to be quirkless, and that because he is quirkless, he can no longer be a hero. But here's the thing. The story of My Hero Academia has always seen Deku as a hero, whether or not he had the quirk of One for All or a quirk at all. And how we're going to get another reference to chapter 1, but that this is something that we could have foreshadowed throughout the entire series, because what made Deku a hero and what made All Might a hero were not their powers or the influence that they had or their quirks, but their heroic ideals, what they were capable and wanted to do even without all of those opportunities. Deku always wanted to be a hero, and the fact that All Might told him that he could be a hero without a quirk was all that he wanted and needed in life. Him getting the quirk of One for All passed down from the #1 hero and his favorite hero was just icing on top. It allowed him to live out his heroic ideals in a world and society where you needed to have a quirk to be a pro hero. But now, that is not the case. That version of hero society has collapsed, and Deku, along with the other heroes, are going to be building a new society built on another version of heroes where A, you won't need a singular hero to keep the peace, and B, quirks won't be a requirement to be a hero. Because as Deku is trying to fight, Aizawa gives him a little bit of bandage wrapping as well as a t-shirt to help him and to prevent more harm from coming to his body. And Deku recognizes the shirt as being something that is very much limited because he is an All Might nerd. And how Aizawa brings up the idea that all of this was given to him by the civilians at UA. As we have Aoyama chiming in, holding Deku's hand, pretty much saying that, hey, we need you to help us as much as we need. And then you just have Aoyama holding Deku's hand saying, yeah, you need to help us as much as we need to help you. And how everyone needs to fight together, as we have everyone beginning to cheer on Deku to do his best. We have Koda, we have Eri, and the most impactful fart, Gran Torino, calling Deku by his hero name, something that Gran Torino hasn't really done until this moment. And all of this tying into the final page of the chapter of Deku running into battle very much in a similar way as he went to go save Bakugo in chapter 1. All of this showing that what makes Deku a hero is not the quirk itself, but who he is at his core. And that's why even if Deku no longer has a quirk of One for All when this battle ends, he could still very much be a hero just without a quirk. Because what makes him a hero and what makes everyone fighting in this war a hero is the fact that they are fighting for others and fighting together for a better world. Not for fame, not for popularity, not for recognition, but because it's the right thing to do. And they're all doing it without inherently thinking about it. They're all moving on their own because they are here. Because we are here. And the fact that all of what we get in this chapter is tied into the title, which is also a reference to All Might saying that I am here, is really just showing that the heroes are changing and that hero society has changed to a point where it can grow and be better without the reliance on a singular hero or just being focused on powerful quirks. Because the heroes who are fighting may not have the most strongest or powerful quirks, but they are still fighting because that's what heroes do. But yeah, that's all I really have to say for this chapter. I just really enjoy the thematic relevance that this chapter has, not only with the title, but with the story of My Hero Academia, the entire story as a whole. And how we got to get a little bit more emotional and understand why certain characters are the way that they are and how they connect to the story as a whole. And while this is going to be building up to another final fight with all of the heroes against All for One, I think how it was handled in this chapter is an amazing start to it all. Also, something that I forgot to bring up earlier is that Golden Week is approaching us. So My Hero Academia is going to be on a 2-week break. So this is going to be another video that you probably won't be getting from me for a while. But hey, What are you supposed to do? Let mangakas have a rest. Alright, that's all I need to say. But hey, what did you think of the chapter? Did you like it? Did you dislike it? And do you think that the reference to the Avengers Assemble moment was done very well in this chapter? And how do you feel about Deku no longer having one for all? Leave your thoughts down below, and don't forget to subscribe to my YouTube channel for more content like this. Do all that cool jazz, and hopefully I'll be able to catch you in my next video. Goodbye!